notion of a tree is not entirely absent from modern science. Take, for example, the tree of life drawn by biologists. They suppose that there is some primitive primordial form of life from which successive forms of lives are manifest. The tree of life in biology's attempt to capture the emergence of complex forms of life from simpler forms. Generally in science, simple means small. So the primordial life forms are the virus and bacteria, and more complex life forms emerge from these virus and bacteria. The problem with these ways of constructing the tree is that they are not capable of accommodating meanings. Because when we study meaning, the notion of simplicity is inverted. For example, a mammal is a simpler idea as compared to a dog. There are many kinds of mammals, but all the mammals have breastfeeding as a common trait, which forms the basis of calling something mammal. Now, the simple idea is modified in many ways in dogs, cats, horses, cows, and so on, which means that the understanding of mammal requires only a few words, but the description of dog needs more words. So from a physical standpoint, we say that small is simple, but from a semantic standpoint, we say that the big is simple. In this case, for example, the idea of mammal is simpler than the idea of a dog, because to describe the dog, we must say it's a quadruped mammal. So we are adding the trait of quadruped, which is increase in complexity. The idea of a dog includes the idea of a mammal, but it includes more properties. In that sense, semantically speaking, a mammal is simple and the dog is complex. So based on this, we can construct the tree of life in a new way, in which the simplest life forms are the simplest ideas, and more complex life forms are created by modifying those simple ideas. In this case, there is an original mammal who gives rise to many forms of individual mammals. The idea mammal, however, always also contains a huge number of animals. So while the idea is very simple, the simplicity is the very reason it is able to encompass a number of diverse species of life. So the simple need not be small. Physically speaking, the simple is small, but semantically speaking, the simplest is also the biggest. Now we can talk about the inverted tree in a new way, in which the root is simple but biggest, and the trunks, the branches, the twigs, and the leaves are more complex, but they are smaller. The tree is constructed from simple to complex, and from the biggest to the smallest. Since it is constructed from simplest to most complex, we can call this tree a scientific paradigm in which we build complex structures from simple ideas. However, since the simplest is also the biggest, we can say that we are trying to divide the biggest into smaller parts. For example, the biggest is the superset and the smaller is the subset. So it is somewhat incorrect to say that the idea of tree is missing from science. It is more correct to say that modern science constructs this tree in a physical manner, whereas we construct it semantically. To construct the inverted tree semantically, we have to study reality as ideas rather than things. If the original thing is physically the smallest, then the most complex thing will be physically the biggest. But if the simplest thing is the simplest idea, then the simple thing encompasses everything, and it is hence the biggest. So the inverted tree has two approaches, physical and semantic. In modern science, the physical approach is used, and I am using the semantic approach to defining the inverted tree.